with Marc Pierschel at the premiere of his film, The End of Meat.
We had a light bulb moment when we were cooking bacon on the stove, and Esther's 5 pounds at our feet waiting for something to fall off of the stove, and I just was like, oh my gosh, like it just happened. It was like this bulb, it was a crazy moment, and we never ate meat after that point.
One of the worst practices ever developed on the planet was this consumption of other animals for food and using them for resources.
These things happen behind walls in these dark, horrible, stinky places where no one's allowed to enter.
I think people would not participate in violence against these animals if they saw the animals firsthand. I have no doubt about it.
Nothing serious is going to change until there's just a catastrophe that forces us to change, that we just realize that we're killing the planet.
There is a vision of the future that doesn't include the exploitation of animals.
Die Wachstumsraten sind so hoch wie in keiner Branche, selbst Hightech und so kann mit uns im Moment nicht mithalten.
Das ist nicht nur ein Markt, das ist nicht nur irgendwas Kurzfristiges.
Jeder Fleischproduzent hat ein veganes Regal rausgeschoben. Guck mal, ich kann jetzt auch vegan.
Plant-based diets could reduce greenhouse gas emissions of up to 2/3, and 8 million lives could be saved.
Sanctuaries provide a sort of aspiration to the kind of world we could create.
Da ist jemand, der leben will.
This is the social justice movement of our times. It affects the most number of beings.
The initial goal is bringing as many non-human animals from the side of the things to the side of the persons.
Instead of domesticating animals, we're domesticating cells.
How could I choose something that came from a slaughtered animal if what my experience is the same?
I think it will eradicate traditional livestock meat production.
Marc, thank you so much for doing this interview with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I have to ask the question that I ask everyone before we get into your film. What is your going vegan story? How did you discover it, and what changed your life to make this decision to go vegan?
Well, it's a very basic story. I was a vegetarian for about 4 years, and I watched a documentary called Baraka. And it's there's a scene where they're debeaking chicks and they're sorting the male and the female chicks, and that made me think about what I was eating and where milk and eggs are coming from. And so I decided to go vegan after that.
And when was that?
That was 2001.
Okay, so you actually went to school for sociology and cultural studies. How did you get into filmmaking? Was that something you always wanted to do, or did you kind of stumble into it?
I just stumbled into it because the first film I made was Edge. That was in 2007. It's a documentary about the US straight edge movement, and I didn't know anything about films back then, so and there wasn't a documentary about straight edge, so we just bought these cameras and looked up a few tutorials how to do a documentary, and then we made the film.
Cool. I mean, your background does kind of lend itself to this type of filmmaking. So this film, The End of Meat, you started with an Indiegogo campaign, which I know is very tough and a very intense route for crowdsourcing money, but you raised a good amount of money. From the start of the Indiegogo until now, how long did it take this film to finish?
We actually did 2 Indiegogo campaigns. The first one was in 2015, and it was to make the film, and then we did one for the post-production in 2016, so it was 3 years from the first campaign until the film was released last year in Germany.
Okay, so you're here in the New York premiere, New York City. Did you think that you've done one other film before, but did you think that the film would get this kind of notoriety that you would wind up in New York screening it at the Angelika?
Well, I didn't exactly envision it, but it's really nice to be here today, and it's sold out, so I'm really happy, yeah.
So you're originally from Germany?
That's correct, yeah.
And in the film, and I've heard this around, they say that Berlin is kind of the capital of veganism. What is your, I guess, if you notice any differences between, what we consider the capital of veganism here in New York City and Berlin in terms of being vegan friendly, being vegan forward?
No, not really. I mean, in Berlin, there's, I think, 73 all vegan places now, so I don't know the exact number for New York, but...
We don't have that many.
Okay, but I mean, it's just the growth in Germany of veganism was one of the reasons that made me want to do the film, because it's just so amazing to see this development in a traditional meat-eating country, and we even have meat companies doing their own vegan vegetarian products, and then, this... 4 or 5 years ago, this vegan train took off, and now it's still going. So it really makes you, leaves you hopeful that there's a future for all animals and for humans.
So the end of meat is it's a very lofty statement. Through your research and through all the interviews that you did, what is your, I guess, expectation for the end of animal exploitation in terms of years?
Well, I don't have an exact date, if that's what you're asking. But I mean...
like an estimation of how long you think it might be.
Well, one subject in the film, there's cultured meat, and the first cultured meat product is supposed to be coming out this year. So, and if we see it coming out, I think it's going to radically change the way that meat is being produced and the way meat is being sold. And I think maybe the end of meat is going to come sooner than we think. So at least that's what I hope.
Well, thank you so much for creating this film. I really enjoy the fact that it gives kind of like a map of how we get there, which is very different than other films out there. It's kind of like death and destruction, and they're kind of really sad, and then your film is very hopeful. So I appreciate your film. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Sure, thanks for being here.
And guys, definitely go check out The End of Meat. There is a premiere coming up in LA. Are there any hopes for a Netflix release or a Prime Video, something like that?
Well, we certainly wouldn't mind. We would be excited to have the film on Netflix, but so far we haven't heard from Netflix, so happy to be on Netflix if they want our film.
Netflix, you want this film. Thank you again.